Hey, Larry, thanks for joining us today. As a way of getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Sure. Larry Helms. I'm currently a VP of sales at Seraphic Security, browser security company. This is my first foray into leadership. So
Oh,
I've been more of an individual contributor most of my career. So I'm really having to stretch the learn some new muscle memory, right? So it's fun. It's interesting, just different muscles. So yeah,
yeah.
been in this space, been selling cybersecurity and IT solutions for gosh, 16 years, 17
Wow.
years. Yeah.
So you must like it.
I do. I do.
Yeah.
There are days where you're a little frustrated, but that frustration, it can be a choice, right? So
Yeah. And getting into leadership, was that your choice or were you just the guy that was there at the time?
probably a combination of the two. I've got older kids now. I've got four kids, and they're in high school and going off to college, and they don't want to have anything to do with me. And I thought, well, what the heck? This might be the best time to do it, right?
Yeah.
So that's where we're at.
Well, my next question was what your motive would be to stay in sales. And with four kids in college, I don't need to ask that.
Yes, there you go. That's exactly
It's
right.
self-evident.
Exactly. Well, yeah, I've got one in college, and I've got three that are going to college, right? So yeah, that's been a that's going to be a financial challenge, but yeah,
Yeah.
fun nonetheless.
And why'd you get into sales?
I fell back into it like most
Yeah.
things. I joke around. I'm in cybersecurity sales, and I came from a very, very small town in Texas, it's just real country town. And here I am. I've worked for three Israeli cybersecurity startups, and my folks and family, they're just like, how did you fall into that? So I just fell backwards into it, honestly. But I do have a passion about it, and I really do enjoy solving those problems for customers.
Yeah. And why leadership?
Yeah. So look, I've been carrying a bag for a long time. And I'm at a point where I've been doing it for a long time, and I think I can help folks, right? I can help
Yeah.
the guys be successful. The truth of the matter is that for me to be successful, I got to hire guys that are better than me. And that's ultimately my mantra when I've hired this team. So I'm looking for folks that I can still learn from as a salesperson. So.
Yeah. Because a lot of leaders don't view it that way. They want to hire really
mm.
junior people.
So I'm very blessed to have a wife that's a C-level executive,
Oh, okay.
and I've learned a lot from her. Um, you have to set your ego aside. You just have to, in most things in life, right? But more so when you're in sales, you got to get to truth, right? And if the truth is if your ego's in the way of the truth, then you're in trouble. So, and I think that way when I'm hiring the folks that are better than me. Um, Gosh, I've got a guy I hired on the team he used to work with years ago. At a startup, a guy by the name of Norm Hirsch. I don't know if you remember Norm, but
I
years
do.
ago.
I work
Yeah,
with
yeah.
Norm.
So, like I said, I got to hire folks that are better than me. So I've hired Norm
Oh,
on the team to run the Northeast. So I've been doing it a lot longer than I have. So yeah,
I
yeah,
remember Norm. Wow,
yeah,
long time.
yeah, yeah. So
And how can you tell if they're better than you or good in general?
I mean, typically it's the reputation.
Yeah.
It's both from the customer as well as, let's say, partners. But it's the reputation. You know they've been successful, but more importantly, the customers will say they really helpful. They're helpful, right? That's ultimately what I hire for. If I've got somebody in the pipeline, then I'll reach out to some of their customers that they say they've closed deals with, and or if in my case we're selling to chief information security officers, so I'll ask to meet a couple of those. So
Yeah. And does it typically start with the CISO or does it start lower and then work your way up as the deal becomes solid?
the old decision maker paradox, right? Um, so. I mean, ideally, look, you do want to have somebody at the top introduce you to somebody. That's in a perfect world, right? But sometimes you have to build from the bottom up, right? And you have to build a coalition to then go sell. Um, I wish they were all top down, but they're not all
Right.
that way,
Yeah.
right? So you just got to get to the right level of influence and find somebody that's willing to champion you successfully, and that has power inside to, or at least not power, but more strong influence internally to that when they speak and then they say, "Hey, we need to do this," folks listen.
Yeah. And I talk to a lot of security reps, and the classic problem is how do you get them curious or interested when there's so many things out there?
Mhm. It is a challenge, and you hate to ambulance. You don't want to ambulance chase, as we say. You know, if there's an event that happens, yeah, a lot of times you have to meet them face to face. I mean, you just have to.
Yeah.
And even getting that first face to face is even more challenging these days, right? Because they're getting 200 calls a day. So you have to get to advance.
Yeah.
Some of this, I think it was Neil Saltman that recommended me to you as well. And one of the things that we were always working on is we called it the tippy top of the funnel. You've got to build the relationship first, so that way when they're not on the defense, right?
Yeah.
Um, and you don't even talk shop, right? You just you get the relationship going, you get the friendship going, and then they'll take your call when it's time to talk business. And that's something I just never. It took me a long time to really get there. Um, Probably longer than most folks, right? I'm
Well,
pretty hard-headed, so.
I think it's pretty fast compared to most folks because most folks think it's an
Yeah.
email to the CISO demo.
It's funny. I'll occasionally try to help folks out and send out some stuff. So I was talking to a CISO yesterday, and he was going over an acquisition, and it was a rather large peer acquisition, but they were doing the acquire of the peer, and you know I had an idea. We have a solution that can kind of help in an acquisition, right? You want to make sure the environment's clean before you bring it over. Um, and I thought it was so unique. He said I got 150 emails about the acquisition. And there I was thinking, going back to old bad habits, right? Thinking,
Yeah.
okay, well, this might pique his interest. Again, you instantly want to help, right? But you think you're being unique, but you're just being one of the
They're
other.
just not there yet.
Yeah, you're not there yet, right?
Yeah.
That's
They
exactly.
have the problem, but a
Yeah,
hundred options doesn't help.
right. That's right. That's right.
And what was it like? I got an Israeli startup. You were probably one of the first in the US.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
What was that like?
Um, I've done this a couple of times. Well, this is my third Israeli, but this was the first one where I was the true first person. Um, it was challenging, but it's been probably the most rewarding in my career, um, because every deal means so much, right?
Yeah.
And we wouldn't have gotten our this latest round of funding had it not been for the work our team did, me and the engineer did, right? And the whole team, obviously. But it's been extremely rewarding. So, but how was it? A lot of hitting my heads, a lot of finding the right ideal customer profile, being able to, if you hear no, being okay with it and just moving on, right? Being saying, oh, you know what, this isn't working, and being honest. Again, honesty, right? You have to be honest with yourself to say something's not working. This messaging isn't working. This trying to solve this problem isn't working. Let's try something else, because it eventually got us to, the right messaging. It got us to the right problem we're trying to solve. So,
That's it. And the company I worked with at Norm, that was our challenge.
yeah,
We were the third round of salespeople they hired. And
wow,
you had to figure out what went wrong the first time. And then they were talking to the wrong people.
yeah,
Great
period. Yeah,
product, just going about it wrong.
yeah,
Now, did the Israelis buy into this long-term relationship, long game approach?
sure, sure. So I've been real blessed in that both the founder and our CRO, they're both Israeli. I've been real blessed that they understand that this is in the American, like, environment, it's going to be a longer sales cycle, number one, but we've got to really pivot to America and we've got to try to sell to American CISOs. And the CRO that we've got over here has got a couple of exits under his belt and so he knows the sales motions and it's been great.
Yeah. And you've had a great track record. What do you attribute that to?
This is going to sound untraditional, but and it might sound Debbie Downer, but so I've been sober for many years, right? And so I've had two careers. I'll call it my pre-sobriety career and my post-sobriety career. Um, so I put a lot of emphasis on the sobriety part of it. It seems to be a secret power for me. I like to think of it as that way because I can go out and entertain customers and I'm ready. I'm up with the birds at 5 a.m. working out. So it's I don't know. It's allowed a lot of clarity, a lot of moral clarity, that's been my secret sauce. But
And it's probably helped you manage or stabilize your emotions.
100%.
Yeah.
Instead of using the drugs and alcohol to cope with the stresses of the job, right? I have found more healthy ways to cope with the stresses of the
Exercise,
job.
yeah.
Right. And it's amazing when you take all of that out of your body, how much better you can cope with stress and anxiety. So
Certainly sleep better.
sure, absolutely.
Yeah,
It's like an all positive feedback loop, eating healthy, all of that,
it
that
is.
deals with it all and allows you to bring your best self. So
And how much does product knowledge matter compared to being able to speak to executives and speak their language? Or do they go so close together that you really can't separate them?
it's funny, the CISO or Chief Information Security Officer, there typically there's two personas. There's the business CISO and then there's the technical CISO.
Yeah.
My default is to do really well with the technical CISO. So my stretch is to always be focused more on the business one. So because that's an area of opportunity or growth for me. But attaching it to business outcomes is what I'm trying to incentivize the team to work on, right? There will always there will always be a technical CISO that you need to get in the weeds with. And that's what we have our engineers for. We got to help really push more of the business conversations to understand really what are the outcomes and what do those
Yeah.
outcomes mean. So,
And learning the messaging, especially in the security space, because you've got thousands of products.
mhm.
And what I noticed, everyone thought they were already covered.
Yes,
We've got 10 firewalls. We don't need another.
right. That's right.
How do you not fall into calling it something, the keyword problem that I called it? If you use the keyword, then they pop up
Right.
a vendor that they already have.
Especially when it's new, right? It's a
Yes.
new way to solve the problem, right? Um, part of that is you're probably selling to the wrong profile. If you're having if that actually is a disqualifier for most of those. That's how I'm trying to train the guys and gals. Is that if they say, no, we're good, we've got that. You know what? That might be a maturity indicator that you need to pivot and just go somewhere else. We found that maturity is the leading indicator for whether we're going to have a successful track, right? If they understand risks and where all the risks are, and they've got these individual contributor or they've got a large team that have subject matter experts in all these different verticals, then they're measuring things, right? So then I can pull data and say, okay, well, if I can cut this type of incident in half, what's the ROI, right? And then get them to agree to business outcomes that way. But that's a maturity thing. If it's a 5,000 person organization with 3 people, they're just trying to keep the lights on, right? They're,
Yeah.
they're like, we're good. We've got X, right? X covers it all and we're all safe. And I'm like, okay, that's not the one we need to be going after. It's the one that really understands it. And it's got a chart where all the holes are, right? And it's the holes that keep them up at night.
And I bet you can get the first meeting where they're curious about what you're doing. It's new. They may have heard of it. They want to know about it. How do you keep the ball moving
Mm.
to make it a must have instead of a Someday I'll get it.
Yeah, obviously that's the challenge, right? Um, the it, for you'll have much more success, I think, if you do have that mature organization.
Yeah.
Um, if we can, if you find that individual, the chances of you being able to convert it to a second session, right, is going to be much more likely. Um, they're going to know the threats that are out there, the attacks that have happened, and they're going to want to know that there are solutions out there that can solve for it. So that helps convert that. Um, do I have a silver bullet? I don't.
Yeah.
Um, I we I could probably use some coaching, some training on that as well. I mean, we probably all could, but one of the things that I'm trying to instill in the new team is that because it is so new, you got to turn off your happy ears really, really well because um, it's a really compelling way to solve the problem. And it's so much so that it's the first organization I've worked or company I've worked for where I've had a CISO say, well, are you accepting new investments? I've had three CISOs say, I'm wanting to invest in this company. Well, they didn't have budget for the product, but
You
their
want to
excitement level
invest.
was through the roof. They were
Yeah.
willing to pull out their own personal money and invest in the company, but they didn't have budget, right? So again, some of the early lessons that we've had to learn. But I'm trying to coach the team to close the early next step, right? As much as you can.
And is it a land and
Reduce the
expand type sale, or is it a swap out and displace?
it, it can be a swap out and displace for the right organization. I've got a very large multinational with 100,000 users that is going to rip and replace a pretty powerful vendor, right? That's considered the thought leader in this space. Um, so there is a rip and replace element to it, but again, they're a very mature organization. They see it and they say, you know what, we can cut our spend in half. We can have a much more secure solution for our environment. We get it. We're gonna go small, but then we're gonna grow everywhere else. Um, Most organizations aren't there, right? We're
Yeah.
early in this category. It's just starting to get defined. So
And I'm sure you're competing against bigger companies.
yes,
And
yeah.
when they get the word that you're in there, I mean, do they ever go around the CISO and because of
Oh,
relationships they have?
yeah. Our competition definitely does, but they've got a much more expensive solution, so they sort of have to get budget from different
Okay.
divisions, whereas ours is a lot less. Well, for now, at least, the price point is where we can go right to the CISO and use their budget. So,
And how do you justify the spend? Is
yeah.
it on the threat? Is it on manageability, easy use? Is it?
We've actually built an ROI tool, more of a business justification tool, right? Where it gets their team involved in talking about what the salaries are for the different components that we should,
Yeah.
lower the number of incidents on this specific category, right? It's got cyber insurance reduction. It's got all of these different components, but the key there is they have to buy into the model, number one, and they have to buy into putting the data in. And that's been helpful for some of these organizations that may not have a line item there, but here's how we're going to justify the investment.
Yeah. Is it six figures, seven figures?
Average sales cycle is probably, or sales size is probably 150 to 300.
Okay.
Um, but we're trying to go higher up into the
Yeah.
market, so bigger organizations. So
So probably 9 month sales cycle or more.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Some of our bigger, yeah, I mean, we've got, a 600, 700K size work, deals as well. But on average, yeah, they're, that 150 to 300.
And where does it typically stall?
Mm. It stalls between that excitement, right? That
Yeah.
first call to to the second one, right? If we get to proof of concept and we've done our job selling value and getting them to buy into the new way of thinking, the POC conversion is substantial. I mean, 90%. I mean, I know everybody says their POC conversions are through the roof, but really it's quite compelling to see. So our success is getting to POC. But we've got to really focus in on that conversion from first level interest to there. Um,
And
that's that
why does the POC go so well? Is it because it's easy to use? Is it people start to,
simplicity.
yeah.
Simplicity. To push it out is quite simple. You can push it out far and wide, but it's usually why it goes so well is because they usually find all kinds of threats that they had no idea were coming through. So it's that kind of sell, right? Where if we can go far and wide, there's a high correlation with the number of devices we push out to in a POC to if we close it or not. The more we go out, the more likely we're going to see all these different attacks that are bypassing their current defenses.
And what about how you do the POCs? Is it different than most companies? Is it just here's the
It's
key
similar
and
playbook to in the past with when I used to sell endpoint technologies. There was again, it was, get it far and wide, and we start detecting stuff that is getting past our current defenses. It's pretty common practice, right,
yeah.
in selling these cyber solutions. But um, you have my engineer would slap my hand and say, don't set up that expectation. And we try not to, right? Because if you set that expectation that we're going to find all kinds of stuff and we
Disappointed.
don't, well, then you've
Yeah.
got no value, right? So we try to set in the POC, we try to set up the right expectations of, criteria for success for it and get their buy-in and improve.
And what surprised you about getting into leadership? You just sit at the desk and watch a dashboard all day and count the,
Um, the what surprised me was getting, when you get a good win, you close a deal, it feels good, right? I didn't realize I would have such that same feeling getting a win selling up. Um, and
oh,
so
yeah.
yeah, like having a good day. I mean, that was kind of cool. It's funny. I told you my wife was a C level. She told me about that. She was like, just be prepared to have the same feeling when you. And I was like, huh, okay, this is really cool. So yeah, and when my team wins, when they're excited and they're introducing folks that want to come on and work here and they're passionate about it. That's always good too. It's a good sign.
And the selling up, was that something that bugged you working for other people that they would just take the stuff that got pushed down?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
indeed. Uh, I've had sales managers that filtered tons, right, and
Yeah.
were great, right, and then I've had some that was just that there was just a complete free flow of complaining all the way down, right?
Yeah.
Uh, would say, would lead with shit rolls downhill kind of stuff.
And I think a lot of people forget that selling up internally. They just do what they're told or scared, I guess, is
Yeah,
the, especially in sales, unless you're crushing it, what leverage do you have?
yeah.
You know,
Especially, yeah. I've got exactly. That's exactly it. Yeah. And part of it is just you just have to be okay. Part of this, a lot of this has just come with age, I think. With you're like, well, okay, things are going to happen that are going to happen that are completely out of my control. So I think that's where a lot of my recovery and sobriety stuff has really helped with. Like I let go, man.
yeah.
What's going to happen is going to happen, and that's okay.
Well, having four kids gives you that too, doesn't it? It's great
Yeah,
management training.
100%. They, they, yeah. You can coach all you want with the kids. They're going to do whatever they want to do, right? In fact, if you coach, they're probably going to do the opposite. So,
Yeah, they just kind of want somebody there to
yeah,
pick them up
listen,
once in a while.
listen, and pick them up.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And when you're interviewing reps, because probably before leadership, you interviewed reps, but you really weren't that attached to it. It didn't really impact to have a different coworker. But when you hire somebody, it's you kind of own it.
hmm
They work out great. If they don't, you got to fix it.
Right. Yeah, my interviewing, I guess, one of the things that I like to do in an interview is I like to try to try to minimize the risk, right? You want to get others, you want them to interview with others because again, you've got to be careful about your own biasness and your own happy ears. Maybe
Yeah.
just
You
really like the
need. Yeah.
individual. You need to, yeah. So you need an outsider's perspective and third party, right? So I usually have them interview with a team. Something else I have them do, and it's also a good way to filter is I have them have their go get the relationships with their CISOs or their technical folks out in the field, and I say, let us do a demo for them. One, it kills two, just kills two birds with one stone. One, it's they've got a Rolodex. But more importantly, it gets them excited. So if they hear the customer talk, get excited about the technology, then they're more likely to say, I can sell this, right? I can help other customers with this type of problem, and they'll shoot them straight because they trust them. So it kind of helps with both ensuring the right one, the right person you're going to hire, but it also sets them up for success.
And do you hire from other startups or the big boys, the big security firms?
Yeah, I think the success is with the startups.
Yeah.
If you've worked your whole career at
Big
with
company.
a Dell, Oracle, or whatever, you've got people that do things for you. You
Yeah.
got people that have people. And a lot of times in a startup, you just have to make do and get creative and wear multiple hats. And
Yeah.
ultimately, you're looking for a builder at that point. And that's that you get those from startups.
Yeah. And have you made any hiring mistakes that you've learned from or
Not yet.
good?
It's sad, like I told you, I'm newer in this, but I'm hoping I've one of the things that I wish I would have done earlier in my career is had a mentor. And I've had several good mentors over the past, 4 or 5 years. And I work with them to try to minimize the risk, right? And decisions I make, and they're folks that I just love, and I can call up at any time.
And what type of feedback do they give you that you've really valued?
I think it's that internal negotiation so far, how to handle it,
Yeah.
um, experience that they've dealt with in those internal negotiations. Just dealing with a recent win here, and I couldn't have done it without my mentors. Um, just being able to pick the phone up and call them and says terminology, all of that, right? That I just didn't have, and that's been helpful.
Yeah. Do you ever think you'll go back to being a rep?
Possibly,
Yeah.
yeah,
Do you miss it?
yeah,
Yeah. It's kind of fun, isn't it?
it is, it is. Um, but it's look, yeah. Yeah, I do, but again, I'm newly in this position, so it's not too far back.
Yeah. And what excites you when you come into the office and you see the team and what do you look forward to?
We're going to get together for sales kickoff, but I really do have a great team, and just spending time with them, getting to know them a little bit more on a personal level, so that way they feel comfortable talking honestly with me, is what I look forward to.
Yeah. Is that something that you didn't see previously at different companies? Yeah.
Yeah, there
You're looked
was,
at as a number
yeah,
and prove your worth
correct.
every day.
Yeah, indeed.
And there's a lot of security folks that listen to the podcast and I think they all look at prospecting as the hardest part.
Mm.
What advice would you give them?
Uh, the key thing that I would have learned earlier is focus on the relationship at first so
Yeah.
that you can get the ask. Don't try to sell too quick. That the prospecting, you're prospecting for lunch, you're prospecting for meeting them up at the, wherever that interests them, right? So you can get to know them. And don't jump too quick to try to make the sell. Especially in a long sales cycle. You
Yeah.
gotta you gotta establish the relationship so you can have the difficult conversations, and they'll call you back when you've got to have the difficult requests. So
And why do you think people position that as old school or they don't have time for that?
I I think it's just the way it might be it might be because of how we most folks come into this career. They start off as a BDR, right? They start off cold calling just to get a meeting, right?
Yeah.
And the meeting is the quick sell, right? That's what they're measured on. So, and then you get to inside sales, right? Where the sales cycle is not 9, 12 months, it's maybe 3 months, right? So you
Yeah.
can, they've got budget, they've got need, they got time, everything is there, right?
Competitive.
So,
Yeah.
so you close it, and then they go out into field sales, and they are looking for immediate gratification. And I'm to blame too. I just told you that example with a CISO, right? I still have those bad habits in the back of my head that are there, and it's not time yet.
It's not time
So,
yet. Yeah. Meet them where they are and build them to where you want them to be
right.
instead of forcing them to be where you want to be.
Oh gosh, I heard a horror story the other day of a startup, and the head of sales came in there, and there was but the CEO was a young guy, right? And he was like, he went to an event. And he's like, look how many CISO's phone numbers I have in mind. I bet I beat you. I bet I beat you. Why can't I'm going to convert these to sales next month? These guys will be customers. And the head of sales was like, no, 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 they're not. And just for a year and a half, there was that butting of heads of expectations versus reality. And
Yeah.
I thank God I don't have to deal with that here. Uh, so,
Well, especially when you have a founder who's an engineer, which typically is
mhm,
what happens because it's so
that's
so
right.
complicated,
Hmm.
and they've never really sold to strangers,
Hmm.
and they just think that's the way it is, or they model themselves after the unicorns
Right.
and think that's the way it is.
Right. And it's not how it is.
Not how it is.
There are going to be companies that catch lightning in a bottle, and I've yet to work for them. But
But you're building them, right?
but we're building them. Right.
Cool. Larry, I really appreciate your time today. Where can people go to connect and follow you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn as well. So
And you're
yeah.
looking to hire?
We are hiring. Yes, yes.
Great.
Check us out at seraphicsecurity.com, job section.